With Kaiju number 8 finally making its long-awaited anime debut, you probably have some questions about the kaiju that exist in the series. So in today's newest video, we're going to be taking a look at every major identified kaiju in Kaiju number 8 and explain everything you need to know and you might have overlooked as you've gone through the story. As always, this video will contain some spoilers, but I'll do my best to keep the spoilers limited to only what you need to know. So before we go into each identified kaiju, let's go over very briefly what a kaiju is in the world of Kaiju number 8 as a quick refresher, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of the video itself. So kaiju, they are monsters in this world that show up and lay waste to cities and people when they do attack. They come in different shapes and sizes. Some of them can have more humanoid appearances than others. Each kaiju has a core that is their weakness, a vital organ inside of their body, and due to every kaiju coming in different types, the location of their core, it can change. Kaiju, they get their powers from the uni organ, which is the organ that contains each of their specific powers. While there are some similarities in nature, kaiju each possess different powers and abilities, so it's like looking through a needle in a haystack to find a similar kaiju in that regard. However, there are some commonalities like having superhuman strength, having high fortitude levels, and proliferation abilities. We even have some kaiju who are able to fly and they can talk using human language, and kaiju have assigned fortitude levels, which is how the defense force measures their power level and their threat level to humanity. However, given that there are so many different types of kaiju, what makes an identified kaiju so special? Well, their neutralization, it takes longer, and their fortitude level, it doesn't always say like at a 9.0. It does vary. However, this is what leads to the Neutralization Bureau to give them a number, a code name, in order to identify them and make it easier to identify them. So the kaiju like this, they have always appeared in history. The identification numbers, they were only implemented after the fortitude observation system was established. According to what the lore tells us, it takes multiple captain level officers to defeat a identified kaiju. When they are killed and weaponized, the corpses of identified kaiju, they become the core of the number weapons. Number weapons are provided by Izumo Tech. They're weapon battle suits which keep the abilities and strength of the kaiju. However, the catch is that the user of the suit must be compatible in order to use them. But so as to not get off track, we'll save a more detailed explanation for a future video on the defense force. For now, let's go into each identified kaiju, and it should be worth noting there are only 15 identified kaiju in the story in the history of the series that have been named, which by now you've met kaiju number 8. So we'll look at some of the others before we dive into Kafka, because there's a lot to get into his character. So kaiju number 1 is known as the Future Sight kaiju and was the first identified kaiju to receive an ID number. Once it died, it was turned into numbers weapon 1 and is currently being used by the 1st Division captain. Kaiju number 1 was super muscular. It possessed superhuman abilities that were described as being nearly inescapable. As a kaiju, its powers of foresight allowed it to see through other living things, locate their weak spots, and it gains enhanced vision. This allows kaiju number 1 to discern the impulses that belong to the observed part, stimulating a type of combat precognition by being able to see what their opponent is about to do before they do it. Basically, for the viewers who came from my Naruto Explained channel, think of this a lot like the Sharingan Eye Insight, which has a similar precognition ability. This in turn made kaiju number 1 one of the most dangerous kaiju that we meet in the series because of how hard it is to combat it being with this type of power. Now, as a numbers weapon, it has the same powers as the kaiju had before. The user of the numbers weapon 1 was able to develop a more advanced variation of foresight. Some of the things that this suit allows it to do is the numbers weapon suit can also sense electrons moving, temperature changes, and terrain changes. Now, at number 2, we have kaiju number 2, which this is the second kaiju identified in number. Its body is covered in rocky plates. It has a long tail of rocks, and each of the arms are thick in size and only had 3 fingers. Its head is very reptilian-like. It's got 14 eyes. It's got a mouth filled with a bunch of teeth. As a numbers weapon, the appearance is one of a super scaly black armor with 2 white metal gauntlets that are reaching up to the biceps and has 2 pipes for the forearm. Back in 1972, kaiju number 2 almost destroyed the largest city in North Tokyo and the largest city in Hokkaido, and was always remembered as a kaiju of enormous destructive power. Its weaponized core was so powerful that the user of the suit of that kaiju was able to inflict massive amounts of damage on kaiju number 8, Kafka, which as you're watching the anime, you should see how impressive that is. Other notable powers and attributes of kaiju number 2 are its high resistance, its sonic attacks that do heavy damage as mighty sonic blast, its ability to use energy emission that comes from its mouth. As a weaponized suit, it can utilize super high levels of electromagnetic energy. Next up, we have Kaiju number 4, which is the 4th Kaiju that is given a number ID, and its power has been used by the 2nd Division Captain and the 1st Division Captain. During its lifetime, Kaiju number 4 took on the appearance of a massive flying monster that had a flat face with 3 eyes and sharp teeth, but its body, it very much looked like a centipede with wings on the back. As a numbered weapon, it has a scaly, light-colored suit. The suit, it can also produce wings on its back. As a kaiju, it had multiple wings that allowed it to fly at super fast speeds, being considered as one of the fastest kaiju we've seen in the series, and it's the fastest numbers weapon in the Defense Force arsenal. As a numbers weapon, it allows the user to produce multiple wings to enter into that high-speed free flight, moving at speed so fast that the human eye struggles to follow. Kaiju number 6 is known as the King of Kaiju and is currently being used by the 4th Division officer. It takes on the appearance of an enormous dark-scale dinosaur with short arms and long legs, and has 2 horns on the side of its head. It has dorsal plates and 4 long tails. Its appearance as a numbers weapon is a dark blue combat suit with a beetle-like texture that possesses pipes and cables to allow for cold flow energy. It had a very impressive fortitude level of 9.6 when it was alive, and it managed to guide a historic cataclysm alongside multiple Hanju level kaiju that it was still looked back at today as one of the largest catastrophes to ever exist. It's viewed as a symbol of despair, which given its immense power, it makes complete sense. Its power was so immense that after it was converted into a weapon, the Defense Force, it wasn't able to find someone for a long time who could match its power, and it was viewed as the most dangerous and the most powerful weapon in the arsenal. Based on what we've seen, its powers appear to be a form of cryokinesis, so isolated powers, which makes a lot of sense just given that it is strongly implied in the narrative that this kaiju is responsible for the snowstorm that was caused during that time, and its suit, it does let off cold energy, so it lines up. For reference, its fortitude level 9.6, it is only second to Kaiju number 8, which is a great segue into the next kaiju. Kaiju number 8, or the main character that we all know and love, Kafka. Since we're mostly focusing on explaining his powers, we won't go too deeply into his character. Instead, I'll save that for another video because there's a lot to go over. Originally an employee for the kaiju cleaning company Monster Sweeper Incorporated, Kafka obtained the ability to transform himself into a kaiju when one entered his body. His kaiju form is covered in black scales and plates. Energy at times can be seen glowing between the cracks when he's charging up for super strong attacks. His powers and abilities are rather interesting. We see him change parts of his body without having to use a full transformation, which allows him to maintain a more human-like appearance. However, we also see his kaiju nature is still there, which makes it hard for Kafka to draw out more than 1% of the released power from the Defense Force combat suit that he wears. His kaiju form has the highest fortitude level recorded so far in the series at a level of 9.8, which arguably makes him the strongest kaiju in history. We see him with brute force overpower other kaiju, including the super powerful Kaiju number 9, and he's even been shown surviving a powerful onslaught of attacks and still had the durability to continue fighting. Even Kaiju number 13 isn't above being overpowered by Kafka, which, as we'll go into later, Kaiju number 13 is pretty strong. As we see at times, this transformation, it does wear down on him and does get the better of him, which can cause Kaiju number 8 to go out of control, and most tragically, he retains his sense of self and awareness, so the whole time Kafka is watching his body go on a rampage, and it's doing so against his will. Another thing of note is that due to his age, his body, it can't take the full strength, and it will eventually get damaged if he abuses his power. Despite him being the only Defense Force member to only use 0% and 1% of his suit's power, he's still strong enough to tear through the bodies of kaiju, in spite of Kafka's own physical attributes being inhibited by not being able to draw out more power. In short, he's just him with immense and nearly immeasurable power. With just one hit, he dishes out serious levels of damage to identified kaiju. With a single leap, he's been shown being able to travel insane distances, and with only one part of his body transformed, we see that he's able to lift up cars with ease. His agility, his speed, his reflexes, they're just downright insane. Being able to evade super fast sword swipes with utter ease and not even have to use a full transformation, he's been shown being faster than some of the fastest characters we've met. Due to his thick skin, he has the extreme durability, being able to survive multiple combo assaults that would have defeated anyone else, and he's tanked sword slashes like it was nothing. When he powers up his body with energy, it raises the output damage, and he can shoot off energy beams by concentrating energy into his spine and shoot it off through his mouth with blasts so strong that even Kaiju number 9 is left in shambles. He's even able to use energy in tandem with his shape-shifting powers to have energy flowing out through his body's pores, like thrusters, in order to enhance his speed and strength, which obviously he's got shape-shifting abilities, being able to manifest tentacles and smaller limbs on his body, and even use his tongue as a long-range weapon. We've seen him block weapons by changing a targeted area of his body into a jaw to grab hold of the weapons that are coming. When he loses complete control of Kaiju number 8, his body grows in size via giantification. He's also able to regenerate and regrow limbs at the cost of his stamina, but when he's out of control, the regeneration happens instantaneously. He can even sense when kaiju are in his vicinity and determine what type of kaiju is coming if he's encountered it before. This sensory ability can also be triggered when Kafka isn't transformed. Now we move on to Kaiju number 9, the main antagonist of the series. Kaiju number 9 goes around and revives the kaiju who were killed by the defense force for the sake of taking back the kaiju power that was stolen by humans. It has a humanoid appearance with spikes on one shoulder, a hammerhead-like shark on its head. In its ant kaiju form, it has the lower part of its body replaced by an ant-type kaiju. When he fuses with Kaiju number 2, it's larger than before, and it has a long tail and a set of 3 eyes. Throughout the series, Kaiju number 2 has taken on at least 2 human appearances. While it is one of the strongest kaiju in the series, with a fortitude level of 8.5, it is one of the most deadly kaiju that we meet in the story, and it's the main antagonist for a reason, because this kaiju is your worst nightmare. In battle, it held off and nearly killed 2 defense force members and was able to hold off attacks from Kaiju number 8 in battle. When it absorbs the power of Kaiju number 2, Kaiju number 9 gets crowned as the new king of kaiju. As we discussed, it has enormous power, but its insane speed, moving at superhuman speed fast enough to flee before the human eye can spot it, and the reflexes are super insane as well, being able to avoid bullets from automatic weapons like he's the Flash in DC Comics. In terms of durability, as we discussed, it's got feats from withstanding attacks from super powerful characters, including Kaiju number 8, and it has the ability to shapeshift to look like a human if need be, which helps it further get the goal of reviving dead kaiju and take back their powers that humans have stolen and make those kaiju stronger than before. It's got the ability to stretch its limbs, which makes it deadly in battle. It can detach chunks of its body to shoot out from its index finger at insane speeds, but the downside is that if someone is able to see the attack, it becomes easier to dodge them. Another thing of note is that its attacks are less precise when they're being shot off in its human form, and they aren't strong enough to damage Kafka in his human form. As he consumes humans, Kaiju number 9 doesn't just get their appearance, but he also gets their memories as well. Kaiju number 9 is able to fuse his body with another kaiju to make it more powerful and make duplicates of itself that are as powerful as the original body, and it can also grow wings to fly. Kaiju number 9 has the power to resurrect dead kaiju, bringing them back to life stronger than they were ever before, but there is a limit to how many kaiju it can resurrect before it tires out. It has insane regeneration abilities, even being able to regrow its head after it's been cut off. Is able to, though as of this recording, through unknown methods, make a brand new kaiju. It can use its mind to move kaiju around, and it can create areas to block out radio frequencies and vital signs, causing people on the outside to not be able to enter and accurately pinpoint location, while also being able to trap those that he chooses. After fusing with Kaiju number 2, it can use energy-like attacks, shooting lightning from its mouth and create an energy shield to protect itself from attacks. Kaiju number 10 was initially created by Kaiju number 9 and has now been weaponized and is being used by the 3rd Division Vice Captain. It has a humanoid appearance with dark armored skin and spikes on the back, and it has a spiky tail. As a weaponized kaiju, the suit takes on a dark gray combat suit that has a mechanical tail and has a cross-shaped eye and green energy lines on the arms and the tail. Its power, it is absolutely nothing to play with, being first identified with the fortitude rating of 8.3 before getting a rating of 9.0 when it increased its size. Those who saw its power quickly came to the conclusion that it might be in the same tier of Kafka Kaiju number 8. Obviously Kafka's stronger, but that's something we'll get into later. Even after it was defeated in battle and having a head with no body, Kaiju number 10 still registered a 5.7 fortitude. With just one punch, we see it shatter concrete and easily destroy tall buildings and send combatants flying several blocks away with a single attack. It possesses some of the fastest reflexes we've seen in the series, and it has insane durability. It can heal itself after being damaged. It can grow appendages and eyes from anywhere in the body. It can grow large in size by a large amount, which also raises the level of its attacks. And most importantly, it has Kaiju control, which can control other Kaiju using sonar to guide them, and it can fire projectiles from its fingers strong enough to destroy buildings. Kaiju number 11 is another identified Kaiju created by Kaiju number 9. It's a stocky humanoid Kaiju with a whale-like head and a shark-like fin on the top. When we see it, it registers a fortitude level of 9.0, and it possesses hydrokinesis powers, which allows it to control water, large bodies of water, with utter ease to use them in battle. It's strong enough to send powerful fighters flying with a single punch. It can enlarge its muscles to increase the damage of attacks, and it has shape-shifting abilities. Now, Kaiju number 12 was also created by Kaiju number 9 and was meant to be the final version of Kaiju number 10. So basically, Kaiju number 10 was a prototype, and Kaiju number 12 is the final form. In terms of its appearance, it looks almost like a one-to-one to Kaiju number 10 to the untrained eye, but there are some small differences, like having 2 horns on the side of the head. Its red eye has 2 vertical openings, and its mouth only has sharp teeth. It first registered a fortitude level of 9.0, and it possesses even more superhuman strength and speed than Kaiju number 10 did, with a single slash wiping out an entire mass area, and it can shapeshift its arms into blades to use in combat, and even detach them to use as a sword in a combat setting should it need to do so. It is worth noting, this Kaiju, it isn't just strong, it is also a master swordsman, and even more deadly is the fact that it has the ability to learn and adapt in fights. Now, Kaiju number 13 is up next, and it's another Kaiju. Kaiju number 9 went out of his way to create. So Kaiju number 13, it shares some of its appearance and similarities to Kaiju number 9, but its powers are where it's really a threat. Its initial fortitude level was also registered as a 9.0, but it eventually became a 9.2 when it began to power up, and it's powerful enough to fight off 1st Division members of the defense force, but it's still scale below Kafka as Kaiju number 8. Like its parents and its sibling, it has shape-shifting abilities, namely being able to enlarge its muscles to boost its attack, and it's been shown moving at high speeds, being able to outrun cars and speed blitz opponents. With a single punch, it's cracked the ground and sent people flying. In universe, Kaiju number 13, it has the highest fortitude level after Kaiju number 8, which is number 1, and Kaiju number 6, which is number 2. So essentially, it's in 3rd place in that regard. Now, Kaiju number 14 was created by Kaiju number 9 also, and it takes on the appearance of a head with 4 human faces, and it's floating in the air, and it has a creepy smile that will keep you up late at night after you've seen it. Its registered fortitude level is 9.0, and it can shoot off energy beams and make force fields of insane energy levels. It possesses the power to hover in the air via levitation, and it can teleport between close locations, which makes it very annoying to deal with in a fight, and it can even manifest portals from its body even after it's dead. The energy beams that get shot off, they come out of its mouth, each mouth on its head, and the force field is durable enough to withstand impact from missiles. Now, Kaiju number 15 is going to be our final Kaiju, and was also created by Kaiju number 9. It's one of my favorites. It takes on a more feminine appearance, and it has huge brains on top of its head, but it can also shapeshift into a couple of human forms to blend in where needed. Its fortitude level when it first registered was a 9.0, and it has the ability to utilize flight and has insane physical strength, fighting on par with several fighters, but even when they have number suits on. And it's been shown cracking the ground in buildings with attacks. It's even shown having relative speed to Numbers Weapon 4, one of the fastest in the Defense Force arsenal. It possesses high speed regeneration, and unlike Kaiju number 9, which is really cool here, it doesn't need to eat humans to take on their appearance. It can shoot out energy beams from its mouth, and the attacks, they can either come out as a scatter shot or they can come out as a single attack. When it touches a target with a beam of energy, it can manipulate the psyche of the target, and it has telepathic abilities that can read minds. It can pinpoint events and emotions, and it can force the target to relive the most traumatizing memories of their past, and it can use mind control to conjure spaces where the victims, they can take any form that it wants, and it can see any illusions that it wants to see through their memory. As you can see, the more that Kaiju number 9 has made more and more Kaiju, the more broken that they're becoming gradually. If you're wondering why I didn't cover, say, Kaiju number 3, Kaiju number 5, Kaiju number 7, it's because as of this recording, they haven't been introduced into the series. So there isn't anything to say regarding that. Make sure to subscribe for more Kaiju number 8 content and more anime content as well, like the video you see on the screen here.